Color. What a big topic. A little scary, but basically what I want to do is give you some ideas, some ways of thinking about color that might help you with your house. Obviously a huge subject, an infinite number of choices. Some people just want white. White, white, white. Some people just want beige. But no matter what you like, there's always going to be a variety of color in your home, whether it comes from inside, the color of your wood floors, the color of your countertops, the color of your red couch, or outside, the blue sky or the gray sky, whatever your climate is. All kind of affects the interior colors that you are living in. Welcome back to the Ultimate House. We're going to try and show you a few things about color here, so it might help you out with your home in getting what you want. I'd like to start off with this example. This is a garage. Once your house is getting close to being finished, if you have typical kind of drywall, you may have a look something like this, where you see the drywall and you see all the compound, and then it eventually gets primed, usually some kind of white, and sometimes that's as far as color goes. It just stays white or it gets multicolored. But this particular garage was a part of a house that we had remodeled, craftsman house actually, and in the home we used a lot of Douglas fir wood to trim out all the cabinets, the doors, etc. And we used a natural finish. This is what Douglas fir looks like. It's got a very orangey kind of color to it, fairly heavy grained wood. And this owner wanted to fix up the garage, doll it up a little bit, so we used this sort of wainscoting out here. There's a little storage space under here, so these are some Douglas fir veneer plywood panels that were made that are removable, so you could stick stuff underneath there. And you can see the stairway got trimmed out with some Douglas fir and so forth. A couple of the givens for this room are that we have this orangey kind of wood. We also have the gray concrete floors, which we were going to leave. The owner decided to add a glass door, so it let a lot more light in the room than had previously been in there. And the room had all these sort of odd shapes, covering plumbing and so forth, some ugly lights. And we decided to have fun with the different shapes. We couldn't hide them without rebuilding the whole garage. So I came up with a plan using the orange of the wood and the complementary color, we'll get into that in a little bit, but opposite on the color wheel, of blue. And I decided to play up the big chunky ceiling, and we came up with a program like this. You'll notice they're both sort of a light orange and a light blue. I think it complemented the wood nicely, and of course it always helps to have a few surfboards and a nice Porsche in the garage. Unfortunately, we couldn't clean up this oily stuff very well, but the garage had this cool aluminum and glass door in it, so it's far from the dingy garage that it used to be. We even got rid of those big ugly fluorescent lights and used some exterior floodlight fixtures and some fluorescent bulbs on there. So the whole thing really picked up kind of a fun look, a fun way of doing a garage kind of thing. But a small lesson in color there. Now, this room, on the other hand, is a more serious, very expensive home in Beverly Hills, actually, and had a fancy interior designer working on it. You can see the fairly traditional moldings, paneled doors, dark wood. The owner had a lot of antiques, dark wood antiques that they liked. Even the ceiling has some intricate plaster detail. So the color scheme here is kind of monochromatic, meaning various shades of yellowish orange. But it has a lot of color in it. So you can see we've got the dark wood of the doors and the floors, but the floors have largely been covered up by carpets. And you can see there's an expensive oriental carpet here, which is sitting on top of another carpet. A trick this designer used a lot. I think this is called a Berber kind of carpet. And some somewhat subtle draperies here with some orangey yellow colors in it, a little bit of green, and same kind of fabric on the chairs. So just another way of looking at color in a room like this. And this is actually the office adjacent to that room. And here a much more kind of bright color. He used a technique of brushing on the paint on these panels. You can see it's not a solid color, but a varying color that was brushed on. And here we have a complementary color of this throw right here, offsetting the green. But interesting how you can get a different feel from this room to this room. So color can be a lot of things. Some people hate choosing colors. It's a really difficult thing, particularly if it's a husband and wife or two people in a project that have different tastes. It can be really difficult if you're using lots of color, if you're layering lots of color as the designer did in the previous slide, or it can be very simple if you go with just shades of white or shades of beige. A lot of it depends on what your vision is for the house and the particular room. Is it a public room, a private room? You may want one kind of set of colors that are soothing, maybe warm colors. We'll learn about warm and cool colors in your bedroom, whereas brighter colors in your kitchen. Another thing to think about regarding color is what is in your finished room. So colors are going to reflect off each other. Do you have dark wood floors, light wood floors? Are you having particular kind of furniture that has color in it? So it's a good idea to think about all the things you want to put in the room. Are you having window treatments? Are you having kitchen counters, cabinetry, all that kind of stuff? How's that going to play into the total picture of what you do? So we're going to talk a little bit about color theory, which can be helpful for some of this. This is the color wheel. I'm sure you've seen it all before. All the colors of the rainbow. And this is a color wheel that you can get at any art store. These are really great. I use these a lot. And there's a ton of information on these. This is the front side, and this is the back side. So I'll go a little bit more into depth on these, but you can see all the different colors, and you can actually spin the outside while holding the inside, and you can see what happens if you mix yellow with blue. You get green. If you rotate this around and you had red with blue, you would get purple. On the back side, it shows you what happens if you add whites or grays and different color combinations. But there are a few characteristics of color that are helpful to know. Hue, intensity, and chroma. We're going to go through all these. Primary colors, secondary, tertiary, complementary, split complementary, etc., etc. Tint, tone, shade, temperature, warm and cool colors. So hue is simply the color. When we say red or blue or yellow or orange, that is your hue. It's the common color. Value is the quality of lightness or darkness. So if you have red then and you add white to it, it would become pink, and it would have a lighter value. Whereas if you added gray or black to it, it would become more of a dark red, and that would have a darker value. The last characteristic here is chroma, and chroma is really the quality of a color's purity, the intensity or saturation. For example, a grayed down color can be called a neutral color and is low in chroma, whereas a bright red would be a high chroma color. And then if you added sort of a gray or black, you would get a kind of a brick red, and that would be the middle of the chroma. All right, with me so far? Hue, value, and chroma. The next thing to think about are primary, secondary, and tertiary. So primary colors, yellow, blue, and red. Those are your three primary colors. There are only three primary colors. These three colors make up any of the other colors. And in combination with white, gray, or black, all the colors of the rainbow. So primary, you have three primary colors. Again, the red, blue, and yellow. And your secondary colors are what happens if you mix two primary colors. So say we mix yellow and blue, we get green. If we mix yellow, we'll make a longer line there. If we mix yellow and red, we get orange. And if we mix red and blue, we get purple or violet. So we have three secondary colors. Now the tertiary colors are the colors that are on either side of the secondary colors. So if we mix yellow and blue, but we use more yellow, we get a greenish yellow. If we use more blue, we get a blue-green. Same thing here with on the violet side, we get if we mix more blue than red, we get a kind of a purplish blue, and same thing on this side. If we mix more red than blue, we get a bluish red. And once again on the oranges, you get a yellow orange or a red orange. So that's all this means. Really, one of the things an art teacher I had at UCLA had us do in a painting class is it was actually a watercolor class, and she said, go out and get a standard blue, red, and yellow paint, and then I want you to make all the other colors with those three paints. So we created our own set of watercolor colors, like this wheel here, by simply mixing all of the different colors. So only the primary colors were what we were allowed to start with. And then we created all these other colors. Good exercise. All right, another thing you have with color is different ways of combining colors. And there's all sorts of fancy names for these things. The complementary color split, comps, dyads, triads, tetrads. Then we also talk about warm and cool, analogous, monochromatic. But the backside of the color wheel, again, you can hold the white part of this color wheel and spin the colors, and you can use this in many ways. But there's a ton of information here. It has all these definitions on it. But essentially, the complementary color is the opposite color on the color wheel. So for example, green is the complement of red, and orange is the complement of blue. If you use complementary colors, much like the very first slide I showed you of that garage with the orange and blue, they will make each other pop. So if you had a blue room and you wanted something to pop out a little bit more, you might use some accents of orange. If you had a green room, you could use some red accents. Another way of thinking about colors is split complementaries. And split complementaries, if you can see here, so complementary is this line right here, the opposite on the color wheel. Split complementary, instead of straight across, are three colors. So you come across like that and across like that. Either side of the complementary color are the split complementary colors. So you could have a green room with, you see this in Victorian buildings a lot, splits and triads and tetrads. So it's just another way of combining colors. Same thing with the triad, which is this one here. You take the color and you go 2 to either side of the complement for a triad combination. And then you can see tetrad is back here. It's 4 colors. So it's not that you have to use these combinations. There's lots of different ways of thinking about color, but this is one interesting way of thinking about combinations of color. Another thing to think about is tint, tone, and shade. And if you tint a color, you're adding white. So these colors, the same color wheel I showed you, red with some white becomes more rose and then pink eventually. Same thing with all these other colors, they just become light. If you add gray, that would be adding tone. So tone is adding gray, and then shade is adding black. Increase the lightness or darkness of the hue, and it changes the value. So if we look back here, if we wanted to use a bunch of different colors but keep them in the same value, we would follow this ring in the color wheel. These are all the same value. The next ring is a darker value, and the next ring in the outside is a lighter value, so on and so forth. These colors here, so if we take blue and we add, let's see, how's this working here? Add white to it, I think it's, okay, right here. So tint, tone, and shade. So if we take this color, for example, blue-green, and we add white, or we tint it, we get this aqua color. If we add tone or gray, we get this kind of a grayish green. And adding shade or black brings us to this darker blue-green. One way to play with colors that's kind of fun and easy is to do it on a computer. And you've probably seen this. Almost all computers have a paint program. This is the one that comes on Windows. I think it also comes on Mac too. But I'm going to make a little video for you here. These are essentially all the colors in the rainbow, the full spectrum. You go from orange to yellow to green to blue to violet to red. So let's take a look. Okay, this is Paint, program that comes on my Windows computer. You probably have seen this or something like it. And the interesting thing here that I wanted to show you is all the fun you can have playing with this color mixing tool. So if you take a box and the main color, the perimeter color is going to be color 1, the fill color is going to be color 2. I pressed on solid color here, and I'm going to make a box, and you have red. Now if I can change it to green, yellow, any color I want here. But say I wanted to make a custom color completely different. What you would do is you would pull up this edit colors thing, and all the architectural programs, all kinds of art programs, they all have a similar kind of mixing thing. What this is essentially the full spectrum of the rainbow here. Now the primary colors, I'm not entirely sure how this thing works, but if you look at red, the primary colors have no color of the other two in them. So for example, red has no green, no yellow or blue in it. I'm not quite sure why these things always use red, green, blue, but in any case, the primary colors are red, blue, and yellow. So you can see here that red, if we pick the red here, which is all the way up, I don't know if you can see it, all the way up in this far left corner up here is red. There's another red over here all the way up in the top right. So this color spectrum wraps around, so you can get a red on either side. But let's just start on the top left, and this arrow over here controls the tint, tone, and shade. So and here's the example of the color that we're looking at. So if we add white to this color, tint, you see it fades to pink and eventually to solid white. So supposedly white is the absence of all colors and black is all colors together. So if we start back in the middle here and we add some gray to it, it'll get darker, more brick red. And then eventually if we add black to it, it's going to turn brownish and then eventually completely black. So you can see there's no red, green, or blue in black. Alright, so if we drag our pointer across the screen here, we can go from red to orange. So remember, adding yellow to red creates orange. So we go from red to yellow, and we get every single color of orange in between. And as we go down, we're adding the tint and shade. Well, we can add the tint here and the shade there. And I think if we come down here, we're also adding shade. And in any case, we're going from red through orange to yellow, and then as we add blues to the yellow, we get green. Blue and yellow make green. And the more blue we add, the more blue-green we get until we get into the blues. And then we start adding reds to blue, and we get purple, violet, all these great colors. But say you want aqua, right? My sister's favorite color. So we're going to start with I don't know, blue-green for aqua, right? So it could be anywhere from this kind of greeny blue. That looks pretty aqua to me. So let's go ahead and say okay. All right, now we've got that color. And we can even add that to our custom colors. Way you can add custom colors on here. But now we have this aqua color, and we can play with this. We can make it lighter. So here's the color in this box, and here's our sample. If we add white, we can see we're getting a lighter aqua and a darker aqua. A lighter value, darker value. Tint, tone, and shade. Now, you might say to me, that's not aqua. Aqua has more green in it. So we could bring it over here. Another kind of aqua. Compare that aqua to this aqua. So you can come up with your own color swatches. If you've ever seen a paint sample deck, one of those things that fans out with a zillion different colors, that's a good way to look at colors too. But say you just wanted to come up with a bunch of random colors. You wanted all these different variations of aqua. You could come up with, you could start with a whole bunch of different variations of grayed aquas, lighter aquas, bluer aquas, and then you could combine those into a variety. Maybe your trim, your baseboard would be one aqua, and your wall color, maybe your baseboard's kind of a glossy, brighter aqua, and then your wall color is a flatter color, not glossy, and a little bit lighter. And those kind of that kind of idea of looking at colors can make a really great look on the interior of a home, combining textures of the shiny colors and the flat colors, as well as subtle differences, or maybe even accent colors. So I encourage you to check out one of these things. They're kind of fun to play around with on your next project, and you can go color crazy. All right, another way to think about color is by thinking about warm versus cool colors, analogous colors, or monochromatic colors. Warm colors are on the red side. So anything from the red to the yellow side of the color wheel we call warm colors. Kind of makes sense. Fiery red. The blues through the greens are the cool colors. And I don't know, I naturally think of, wintertime blue ice, blue cold, summertime sunny yellow. Seems to make sense, right? Analogous colors are taking any color and using 3 colors adjacent to it on the wheel. So you could say blue, 1, 2, 3, 4. This would be an analogous color paint scheme using those 3 colors. You could also use orange, yellow, green. These 3 would be analogous. Any 3, you can go around the wheel, and any colors that you want to choose, any 4 can be used in an analogous paint scheme. Here's again that backside of the color wheel. Monochromatic. In monochromatic, you use all the tints and tones of any color. So if we wanted a monochromatic orange scheme, we would use orange, lighter orange, grayed orange, toned orange, or shaded orange, blues, violets. I'm sure you've seen a room. My grandmother used to love to paint violets, all shades of violet in a room. Another way of thinking about color. So color and houses. We often associate different color schemes with different historic types of homes, like craftsman homes, Spanish homes, contemporary homes. Craftsman homes typically originally had sort of dark browns, very natural colors, ochre, yellows, dark greens. In fact, a lot of people these days think of the original craftsman colors as too dark. Spanish homes had a lot of white, a lot of bright tiles and things like that. Contemporary homes you might think of just white walls. Fashion obviously also comes into color. All these paint companies always come out with colors of the year, which always cracks me up. They choose the colors they think are going to be most popular this year. And you certainly see color schemes that go in and out of fashion. I remember when I was a little kid, when we would go skiing, it became very popular to wear neon colors for a while. So neon was in. Here's a colonial home in Newport, Rhode Island, actually a home that was restored by the Doris Duke Foundation. You can see the plaque right here. And a beautiful blue color. At least I think it's a beautiful blue color. So what's going on here? We've got a black door. So that obviously has some effect on the blue color. We also have these yellow shutters on the inside of the house and these white shades that sort of are also factors in the overall look of this home. We have this gray wood shingled roof up on top. And if we pull back a little bit, we have even more colors. Most noticeably, this pale blue home back here. Kind of interesting when you look at this house without that and then you look at it with it. There's also a yellow home back there and a red home, and then this house has the gray of the street as well as the red brick sidewalk, and then the natural stone foundation, which has colors of gray and yellow and green. I assume some mildew in there. And this white fence, bright white fence back here. So color and context, it's interesting to think about. But for the most part, this home is solid blue. In other words, they didn't use different colors for the trim around the windows. They did use a different color for the door, but there's one color scheme. Now, here's another house, also in Newport, Rhode Island, also restored by the Doris Duke Foundation, and I think the exact same blue, except this one has a bright yellow door. Different effect, right? Which do you like better? Blue and black? Blue and yellow? If we pull back from this house, there's even more color involved here. You have this big green tree, bright blue sky, and the red brick, the gray of the road, the light gray of the sidewalk, these little yellow flowers tying into the door. Brick sidewalk over here. Interesting. Same thing goes on in the interior of a home. When a lot of times people will think of a color that they want, and then they'll put it up when the room is just in the rough stages of construction, and then when the floor is finished and everything else is done, the color that they liked before they don't like anymore because it has other colors affecting it. So what do colors look like on some other homes? This is a home in Idaho, and very beautiful natural home. Obviously has the stone. We've got the grasses outside and the natural wood siding, which is used both horizontally on the first floor and vertically on the upper floor. Dark windows, a wood shingle roof. We have obviously the terrain of all the pine trees and the snowy hillside. Probably looks a little bit different in the summer, but this is a color scheme that obviously blends into the countryside when it's natural like this. Here's a completely different idea, contemporary home in Ojai, California, and this house is clad with metal siding, silver metal siding. So it reflects back colors that are around it. How does it react with the blue sky? Does it make it turn less silver and more white? I'm not really sure. But another interesting kind of way of looking at the color, we obviously have the big green mountains, bright blue sky, and this silver is very reflective and very light in value, contrasting to its surroundings. This home is more the opposite. Again, a more natural home, a shingled home in Rhode Island, and the shingling has weathered. You can see it's darker where it gets hit by the rain and lighter where it doesn't. It has a shingled roof and a very dark green, forest green kind of color, trim color around the windows and on the railings. So that dark green is kind of like the dark green in the depths of the bushes. Then we have Miami, where bright colors in South Beach, Miami are very popular. So you have a often bright blue sky in Miami, sunny weather, and lots of very vibrant colors on these Art Deco buildings. Interesting to note here that this building, the values are all similar. In other words, it's the light green, the light bluish purple, and the lighter yellow green up top. They're all the same value. Whereas this Deco building uses complementary colors. So they make the colors more vibrant. You have the pink against the green here. So how do you get the color you want in your house? Well, one good idea is to put up samples. So when you look at blue swatches from the paint deck that your painter gives you, you might choose out a variety of them and be quite surprised when you put them up on the wall compared to how they look at from the little chip. So this is a variety of 4 different blues. Here's a couple different greens in this different room. But notice that we've got all drywall walls. They haven't even been primed yet. So it's largely white. But the windows have been covered over because they're painting. We don't have the trim color on the windows and doors yet, which is actually going to be a dark wood in this particular house. And we don't know what the floors are going to be. These are radiant floors being put in here, so the finished floor is going to be put over the top of that. So good idea to get started, but can look radically different when the whole house is done. For this particular house, we wanted to use rich color, and we started with a 3-dimensional rendering of the inside of this room in order to help us. And we hired an artist who came up with a bunch of different color schemes and radically different, not necessarily things that we would like, but to try to just bring out a bunch of different ideas. So here's the room. Here's a color scheme he came up with: green floors, kind of beige walls with this maroon color, and he's got some bright colors on the furniture. I think the counters it had been decided that we were going to use white countertops, and we were going to have dark wood around. So those were some givens. So here's another look with very dark floors as opposed to these very light floors. You can see a different. So this starts to give you some ideas. Oh, we like this feel. We don't like this feel. We like the darker floors, the lighter ceiling, vice versa. But here we have more dark wood trim around the windows and dark floor and a light ceiling compared to this one where we had lighter. The whole thing was much lighter. Here's another one, almost like a pop art painting. Bright pinks and greens. So we remember pink and green are complementary colors. We've got some aqua blue in here. Here's another look with a dark ceiling and a light floor. Interesting to see how a dark ceiling affects a room. Here we have a dark floor, light ceiling, different colors on the walls. And then this one was getting towards what the final decision was. We had sort of a toned down ochre color, kind of a lightish blue, white ceiling. This had a white trim casing around the dark wood of the windows, and eventually went with a kind of a blue, deep blue floor. So this is actually a combination of 2 renderings. You can see the line here where we took a blue floor and the color scheme from the top and combined them to get something that we thought looked good. Here's a computer rendering. This actually wasn't available at the time that we did the house, but interesting to note, when you do a computer rendering, you can actually use some of the terrain from outside, the trees and the colors of the real exterior in your drawing as well. And of course, you have infinite number of colors you can change on renderings in a computer. But this one had different, you can even change the light values coming out of the lights. And here is what the final look for that room was. So you can see the dark blue floors. This is a lightish blue paint here with the orangey red color. And then there's some blue coming in back here. Or you can just paint a room and then paint it over again. So a couple of color tips, color ideas. Important to try to figure out all the stuff that will be in the room. In other words, what kind of furniture? Carpets, beds, bedspreads. Are you going to have window treatments? If you're creating these things, I mean, you could have all white furniture, you could have a white bedspread, you could have a red bedspread. That might affect the color, the reflection of the colors on the walls. Do you have dark floors, light floors, wood floors? It's a good idea to start with renderings and try different color combinations. Even if you're a white person, you can try white, different shades of white. You can have a darker white or a grayer white or a browner white, and that can give you some depth and some relief in the room that can be very attractive. I have an architect friend who worked on a project where they only wanted beige, but they wanted lots of different beige, and he kept saying beige is not a color. There's a famous architect who did the Getty Museum in Los Angeles, and he's a modern architect. Can't remember his name at the moment, but all his buildings were white. The exterior was white, the interior was white. He did everything in white. And when they chose him, they said, we don't want white. We want you to be our architect. We want you to do the building, but it's not going to be white. So you have to use essentially beige. So he's got a zillion different colors of beige and textures and so forth. And it's an incredibly beautiful building and museum and piece of architecture, but it's not white. Pick something you love. Good idea. Obviously, there are endless, infinite number of color ideas. You can go with a color pattern of whites, all the same white. You can go with warm colors, beiges, yellows, tans. You can use beiges, yellows, and tans, and maybe have some subtle accents. Maybe the subtle accents are in the furniture or the paintings or the art. You can use complementary colors in different ways to bring out color and punch things up, or just with little accents. Think about value. In other words, if you're using a bunch of different colors, it might make more sense to have them all be in the same value, or maybe one is a much brighter, darker value than the others. What are your favorites? For a long time, I used lots of greens, light greens, and my first favorite in the coloring box of crayons was always the blue greens, hence the logo here. I still like blue greens. I like all kinds of colors, but you may be a red person, you may be a purple person. So there you go. There's a lot of information about color. I hope some of it's helpful for your project. Consider using a little color other than primer white because it's fun and it can add a lot of character to your home. I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Thank you very much.